Good evening. Hello. How are we all? I do apologise. I thought this was. I thought in my head I'd set this for 6:30. Classic alcoholic brain. Classic alcoholic ADHD brain. Got the timings wrong. Sorry. So sorry. How are we? How are you? Oh, let's get rid of that. Vlogmas is exporting. It's landing earlier this evening. So for those of you who follow the channel and follow the hijinks and ridiculousness at Christmas, that will be landing very soon. Look what I've got in the back of my pocket. I've got, let's settle in. I've got this, possibly the most vital aspect of Christmas, is it not? The cracker screwdriver. What say you? Comes in vital. It's been vital in some of the things that I've been doing over the last couple of days. If you needed a good screw. So guys, I thought this would be nice to have a chat about alcohol. I thought we can think of people that we know, family, friends, extended family, relative friends and stuff like that. People who are approaching Christmas and approaching the festive season with an aspect of trepidation. And that trepidation can be either because you're a drinker or because you know someone who is a drinker. And that person and that drinking can really get in the way of what's already a really highly pressurized time to kind of have fun. So the first thing I wanted to do, I just want to ask you guys a couple of questions, or a question first of all. So who here, do you feel you have an issue with alcohol? As in, do you drink too much? Now, obviously, for anyone who doesn't believe in the whole idea of addiction or alcoholism, if you don't, some people are still of that sort of rather antiquated sort of opinion that, let's just control it and, just you can't hold it and, just say no and all, if you're greedy and all this kind of stuff, then I would just recommend just don't watch this because it's going to probably annoy you. So, but, does anyone here themselves have an issue with alcohol or feel that you perhaps drink too much? The next question is, do you feel anyone else you know drinks too much? Or do you feel that you know what it takes to define you as an alcoholic? I often get asked the question, how do you know, or how do I know if I've got, if I'm an alcoholic or I've got an issue with alcohol? And that's a really, really hard question. Edward Bevington, from a Navy family, I drink when I drink, but haven't for years, no loss. That the ability to pick it up and drop it, to indulge in it and then have none of it, for me is one of the key signs that you're not necessarily an alcoholic or struggling with drink. What would you do in an AA meeting? What would I talk about now? Why did I drink? Why did I drink when I drank? I drank to belong. I drank to take the edge off what I now know, looking back, is a sort of social anxiety, or a sort of feeling outside of things, or a sort of hesitancy and anxiety and stress around the ability to fit in or to belong or to say the right thing or be the right person and all that kind of stuff. So drink was a neat route to, on the one hand, fortifying yourself, so getting you over those hurdles, getting you through the door, getting you past the awkwardness of small chat and all that kind of stuff. But then it also becomes something that potentially makes you feel, fortified, like you could do anything. Like suddenly you can make the night really enjoyable. Suddenly conversations flowing. Suddenly you can be funny. Suddenly you'll get up and you'll do stupid games and you'll be impressive and you'll be foolish and you'll be childish and you'll be all these things that make people want to be with you. And so there's that aspect to drinking around Christmas, which is, it's a way of losing your inhibitions, a way of loosening yourself up, and a way of, in a sense, making yourself seem a bit more interesting than you think you are. Now, of course, that's completely different to whether you become more interesting, because once you've had a drink, more often than not, lots of people are fun for a period of time. There's no two ways about it. And I think one of the things I've often said in the past whenever we've done these chats is, I'd be lying if I didn't say I had a great time drinking at times in the past. I mean, I'm now, God, what am I? 19 years sober. I've got my chip somewhere. Look at this. 18 years? What's this? This is 17. I think that's 17 years. Here you go. And so, I mean, drinking for me was a way of loosening things up, loosening myself up, getting myself to a place of feeling at ease with myself. Um, but as I was just saying, there were many occasions in the past where it was great fun. And I think when you're a recovering alcoholic, or when you're sober, or when you're leading a sober lifestyle, it's really, really important to, I think, own that honestly. Because I think everyone smells a rat if you say, oh, yeah, no, it was all wrong. It was all bad. It was all terrible. It's, especially when you're parents and you look at your kids, you sort of go, yeah, no, you just don't do it. Just don't. I mean, that's ridiculous. As soon as you say don't do it of anything to anyone, most people want to try it. And let's face it, alcohol, I would argue now for the younger generation, spliff and drugs is much more of a problem in a weird way than necessarily alcohol is. So I think we're going to have, in the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to have a bounce in narcotics, addictions, and all the various kind of other forms of kind of mind-altering drugs. You hear more and more articles about more and more younger people drinking less, but I don't think that's necessarily that they're not doing something. They're edibles, crystal, you name it. They're doing a whole host of other things, as you say, Edward Bevington. But that thing of why do we do it? Why do we do it? Well, so one reason was to belong. One reason was to be convivial. One reason was to feel like you were part of the crowd. One reason was to seem more interesting. My big worry was, oh God, if I don't drink, I'll be boring. And I would make this terrible judgment of other people that, and people like way back, you'd meet them and they'd be drinking, they wouldn't be drinking. And you'd be like, I was never of the opinion that go, oh, you're boring. But I'm sure I probably said, oh, don't be so boring. Don't be so boring. Especially when people say, oh, I'll just have one drink. Don't be so boring. This terrible weaponizing of, drink more, drink more, drink more, drink more, drink more. But, we were looking at a time where there was so little rehabilitation or so little idea of how dangerous or difficult alcohol could be. So that was one aspect of it. The other aspect of alcohol, why do we drink? And I think it's a real problem, this at Christmas, is, do you do this? Drinking to amplify fun, drinking to celebrate, drinking to have, drinking to make things seem better, drinking because it will empower you into feeling like something, you deserve it. It's a reward. And I think that's something else that happens around Christmas as you get to the end of the year. More often than not, people have had their challenges in that year. They've worked hard, they've done this, they've done that. And you get to the end of the year and you feel like, oh, this is my due. So Christmas becomes a little bit like a sort of amplified version of the weekend, but for a longer period of time. It's like, yeah, no, mustn't be overindulgent here, but now we've hit Christmas. Let's just go hell for leather. And of course, what can happen with that is you do it, you have too much of it, and then you end up becoming, if you're the drinker, you end up becoming the potential problem within a family. And I think my heart goes out to a number of families or people, friends, as I say, friends of friends who I know who have a member of their family who's drinking too much. They're approaching Christmas Day, they're approaching the festive season. And it's not that they don't love that person, far from it. And it's not that that person won't necessarily have a few drinks and still be fun. But it's the unknowability. And I think something that creeps into drinking, and I think Christmas is quite an important moment in the year as a sort of barometer for this, is for those that it could be friends, it could be siblings, it could be partners, it could be extended relatives, whatever. If you notice year on year after year, they drink a lot at Christmas and alcohol is a huge part of it. But each time they do that, the kind of the damage done is that little bit more. Or the kind of chaos caused is a little bit more destructive, or that they're just seeming even more sort of ragged and kind of weird and irrational than they have years before, then you are possibly looking at someone who is using alcohol in a way to to manage and medicate their emotions. So so you've got wanting to not feel alone, wanting to not feel boring, wanting to belong, wanting to overcome social anxiety. And at Christmas, there are so many social situations where you're having to meet people, see people, spend time with people who potentially, just because they're family doesn't mean you get on with them. And so you're like, oh, what can I do to just get over this? And sometimes I really feel that. I really feel the lack of being able to have a substance, for want of a better expression, to get you through a socially awkward, not even socially difficult, but socially awkward situation. But the important thing to remember is if you're one of those people, is that everyone is feeling this. I mean, Christmas is one of those times where everyone is having to engage with lots of people they don't want to engage with, and they're engaging with lots of people that they do want to engage with, and actually, really, everyone wants to just flop out on the sofa, don't they, and not feel a thing. Which leads me to then, so you've got drinking for celebrating, it's Christmas, hey, but you've also then got drinking as a means of commiserating, or sort of, what's the word, sort of medicating negative feelings, or, you know, feeling depressed, and what have you. Oh, let's just read that out. Jogging Jelly. Hi, everyone. This is my first sober Christmas and just taking it a bit at a time. Bit at a time, and this is really important. I mean, there's a great phrase when you're running a marathon, and getting sober is like running a marathon. But you know, running a marathon, they say, I wind Nanny Di up with this a lot, they say go slow and then go slower still. And the idea is there is no rush. Time is gonna tick along. Time will tick past anyway. So you don't need to add your own sort of weight behind the stress of getting to some kind of perceived destination, or you don't need to rush. So take each minute as it comes. And one of the things that I do that's really useful for almost every social situation or every scenario where you're thinking, oh God, you know, if only I had a drink to be able to get me through that. But, or you're thinking, if I have a drink, oh, but then I might say something that's wrong or do something that's wrong in this situation. Give yourself the choice to not have to do any of the social things that you're going to do right up until the minute before you have to do it. I sometimes say to the girls about social anxiety, and forgetting alcohol, but you know, if you feel social anxiety, just say to yourself, I don't have to do this at all. Right up to the point that you're about to even walk through the door or come downstairs, or someone's going to arrive at your front door. Just think to yourself, I don't have to do this in the way that I think I have to. I don't have to be at the door, opening the door and being, you know, God's gift to everyone as a host. I could ask another member of my family to do that, or I could go upstairs, or I could just delay it, or I could postpone it, or I can, you know, wait a bit longer. You don't have to run at things at full tilt. One of the big mistakes I make is I feel it's my responsibility to entertain every social situation. And so I put myself under inordinate pressure. And, you know, those around me who love me often say, you know, just calm down, just rein it in. You don't have to be going at the breakneck speed you need to go at. You know, no one person, and I'm talking to the drinkers here who use drink as a means to get through a social situation, no one person is entirely responsible for that social situation. And if someone makes you feel like that, then that's their issue, not yours. You're not entirely responsible for a social situation. I mean, I'm talking about, you know, social situations where alcohol is being drunk. A big question that's often asked as well by people, sometimes it comes up here, you know, trolls and what have you often say this sort of thing, you know, oh, it's so inconsiderate having alcohol in the house, given that I'm sober. I have actively made it a point of saying, or made a point of saying to Nadia and the family, that I don't want alcohol to be held at arm's length from me. I don't have, and I'm very fortunate in this regard, because not everyone has this, so I'm only talking about my own experience, but I don't necessarily have what I call a sort of substance fear, as in, you know, I'll look at a bottle, I mean, I can smell a cork, I can pour a glass of wine for someone. I don't have a pathological fear over the substance, the liquid, the very material. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've been to parties in the past, twice, in fact, I've been to 2 parties where someone gave the wrong drink, and as soon as I felt a fleck or smelt the vodka in my mouth, it was fired or thrown across the room. It was like a physical, aversive kind of reaction. So I don't have that. So for me, it's actually really key that people aren't compromising all of their lives around alcohol and how they drink and how they conduct themselves in order to cater for me, because that would make me feel unhappy. I wouldn't feel pleased about that. I would feel that my sobriety then is kind of interfering, if you like, with the ordinariness of everyday life. That doesn't mean to say that, you know, if I know there's a situation in which a lot of alcohol is going to go down, drinking's going to go much further than, say, we thought it was, incoherence is going to be high, I, as the sober one, have the capacity and the freedom to remove myself. I can either take myself out, or I can take myself away from the room, or I can remove myself. So, you know, for some people who say it's dangerous, it's risky, it's not for me, but I think it can be for many, many other people. So, if you're one of those people who you don't feel you can have alcohol around you, then you are absolutely, it's in your right to say to anyone else in the family, do you mind, not having like just a half-open bottle of Baileys in the fridge door? Especially, if you think that potentially you could find yourself suddenly just pouring yourself a glass. I mean, I've heard many stories of people who relapse, who, go to the fridge door and they've had wine in the door for months, weeks, repeatedly, and then suddenly they just go for it and they just drink it. So, for me, that's not my story. That's not how I relate to alcohol at all. And I think my family would say they're lucky, and I'm lucky that I feel like that. I don't, and I also don't find it insensitive. And in fact, something else that I actually like about, or try to do with my sobriety, is kind of have a sort of gallows humor about it. I try to live in relationship to it with a kind of dark sense of humor, almost by sort of taunting, not flirting with, but taunting, mocking, satirizing, being sarcastic in the face of addiction and alcohol. I kind of almost try and sort of neuter its strength or its hold over me. But all of this said, Christmas is a really, really tricky time. It's a time of overindulgence. I struggle with food as much as I struggle with alcohol. I've hidden some Nutella somewhere now. I haven't told them. I've eaten. You've probably seen in Vlogmas. I've eaten what they call donuts and haven't told anyone. We all have compulsive behavior. We all have impulsive behavior. And if there's anything I could say to anyone who is, jogging jelly, I think you just said this is your first Christmas. Keep it 1 minute at a time. Keep it 1 day at a time. Keep it also at the same time, if you can, try not to over fixate on the clock. Try not to be thinking, because sometimes you can become slave to the clock in a sense, which is like, oh, I'm going to get to this sort of, benchmark, or this point, or this achievement. And actually what you'll find sometimes is it's a bit of a fool's gold, is you'll get there and you'll be like, well, this doesn't feel any different. I mean, I felt that 19 times. You get to each year, and it's really important actually. By about year 10 or year 11, especially year 10, actually 10 years of sobriety, I thought to myself, okay, well, there's no sort of extra one when I hit 11 feeling, and there's no sort of times 12 feeling at 12. It doesn't, do you know what I mean? The satisfaction is in the daily, minute by minute accomplishment. And so in that sense, try not to become, on the one hand, celebrate those little kind of markers of sobriety. But if you can try not to, I don't go enough, Gabrielle, if you try not to, but try not to over fixate on them. For example, something else that I think is really important is finding some part in your life that has and when I say this, I'm not talking about God. If you watched our channel, you'll know where we come from with all this. I'm not a religious person, but I am a spiritual person. I do believe in spirituality, and I do believe that we are all kind of driven and we're wired in ways that aren't just intellectual and practical and all that kind of stuff, but we are actually soulful individuals. And if we're soulful individuals, I think it's really incumbent on us all to find a soulful meaning in life. Now, for lots of people I know, it's creativity, it's writing, filmmaking, whatever, art, that's one way of doing it. For other people, it can be religion. I think AA or a 12-step fellowship is one of those things. I think the very act of going to an AA meeting can become the spiritual foundation, or the spiritual focus of what it is that gives you that focus and moves you through things, and you get that strength, and you get that collective strength, and that sort of harmonious sense of fellowship, without wishing to get a bit Lord of the Rings about it. But I get that, and that has been part of my journey. It needs to become a bigger part of my journey, but it's not the journey. And for me, it's a fine balance for me between both engaging in that, but also not being overly defined by it, because sometimes there can be a rigidity in nearly all ways of managing addiction. Do you know what I mean? So there can be as much rigidity, if you like, and sort of, what's the word? Not anality. There can be as much sort of obsessive, anal obsession with the rules in AA as there can be with the obsession of an alcoholic having a drink. And so, just because you're in AA doesn't mean you're not absolutely crackers and necessarily, struggling with addiction. The other big thing I would say, and this is an important part of whatever that, so I would say, try and find that soulful thing. That soulful thing, and I say soulful more than spiritual, because you say spiritual and people go, yeah. I mean, I used to, "Oh, what do you mean spiritual? What does that all mean?" God, they say in in AA, God as you perceive it, or God as you see it, or God as you, not a God, but what's the thing that you believe in? I believe in the ability of humans to create, and to create, masterpieces of art and stuff that emotionally connects people. I think that's an incredibly magical thing that we can do. Magical. So what is that magical thing? And I think if you can find that magical thing, it might be a 12-step fellowship, it might be a hobby, it might be some lifestyle choice, that allows you to sort of take you away from you. And I think that's really key. And I think one of the best things you can do at Christmas is be of service. I've said this before. One of the, and this is where I do cherry pick those bits of AA if I'm struggling, is that, being of service. Now, there's no better time than at Christmas to be of service to either your partner, your family, your mum, nanny di, relatives, those who are maybe struggling more than you, or maybe those who aren't even struggling more than you. Just little kind of random acts of kindness, where you're not interested in having your ego massaged or getting a pat on the back. It's not about you, it's about them. It's not about you, it's about making others feel held and cared for. And in a sense, what you're then doing is you're providing a soulful, I don't know, experience of some sort for them and for you. And so it's that thing of, the act of, and I don't mean just giving, because so many people don't have much. It's not the act of just giving money or material. It's the act of giving time. It can be the act of giving thought. It can be the act of listening. Giving your hearing, giving your attention to someone can be something. And sometimes that can be the very thing that gets you through a social situation. If you go into a social situation thinking, oh my God, I can't have a drink, they're really boring, maybe pause and think, why are they so boring? Why do I think they're boring? Why are they boring? I mean, they might be boring, don't get me wrong, but about certain things. But it'd be like, well, hang on, why are me and this person not actually meeting eye to eye? Maybe I need to ask some questions of them. Maybe I need to make more of an effort with them. And by making more of an effort with them, it will resolve the situation and remove your desire to have a drink. Because I think sometimes when I look back at some of the social situations I was in, or the social groups I was in, my God, I was bored. But you know what? What did I do? I just simply thought, oh, fuck it, I'll just have a drink. And having a drink will just it's a kind of microwaved version of kind of getting social and getting over a sort of awkwardness. Why not have a proper conversation? Why not actually, go the slightly more difficult route, make more effort in a sense. Good Ship Lollipop. Ellery, our local pub is very chill. They're not all crowded. We have an older generation who go daily for a bite and a pint. See, I love nothing more than a convivial pub. Really nice. Food, I'm addicted. Pre-seat, yeah. I mean, and again, everyone shifts their focus. I think if you accept that in life you are going to rotate through addictions and compulsive behaviors, you're going to be drawn to this thing. It might be that you're addicted to Instagram and you can't stop scrolling and you can't stop going down wormholes and just looking at all sorts of accounts. That's okay. If you're not destroying, it's ever diminishing returns, isn't it? You try and work out, if I'm not injecting heroin into my eyeball, but I am, I don't know, eating a Mars bar on the quiet too often, well, you know which one is less damaging to you. Do you know what I mean? Go with the Mars bar. And then once the Mars bar situation gets out of hand, then we'll deal with the Mars bar. And I do think there has to be a pragmatism around that, shifting where your addictions lie, where your compulsions lie, where your impulsive behavior lies. And the other thing going into the new year, I would also say, is more often than not, if you have a problem with drink, or you feel you have a problem with drink, or if someone you love and care for has a massive problem with alcohol at Christmas, more often than not, behind it and beneath it is another much more sort of, I don't mean meaningful, but beneath it there will be another sort of level of some kind of mental health condition or issue. More often than not, people who go into rehab and get sober discover that they become diagnosed, like me, I'm diagnosed with bipolar and ADHD. You get diagnosed with depression, manic depression, all sorts of things can be diagnosed. A lot of people on the autistic spectrum will use alcohol as a means to kind of overcome a social confusion or a social dislocation that is awkward to overcome. And so alcohol is an easy way to get you through that sort of confusing and often destabilizing kind of moment. Joni, hi Joni, I hope you're well. Love to Teddy. I only have a Bailey's hot chocolate at Christmas time. Don't like the taste of alcohol in general. I mean, it's odd, isn't it? My grandparents, I mean, I'm a raging alcoholic when I was going, but I never saw my grandparents drink touch a drop of alcohol. I saw my mum drink quite a bit. She did all sorts of other things, but it's weird, isn't it? It doesn't, the jury's out. I still wonder sometimes whether it is genetic and all that kind of stuff. But all I would say is that if you are in a family and you have someone who has become, say, demonstrative, monstrous, difficult, snappy, hideously eggshelly and all that kind of stuff, I would fully recommend that you, as a family member, drop in on an Al-Anon 12-step fellowship meeting. It's a space for families of addicts to go and just dump your emotions. If you walk through the door, everyone else there will look at you and go, we know that you are living with someone who's you love and they love you. It doesn't mean that you don't love them. You're not engaging in some act of sort of infidelity, or you're not being suddenly disloyal by going and reaching out to an Al-Anon fellowship of some form. And if you yourself are the person who feels, and this is an important thing to say, and it's going to happen a lot to men, if you feel somehow that you're distanced from your family, or that there's a sort of otherness, or that you're kind of not really connecting, and alcohol is part of your equation, and there may be a moment there for you to kind of go, am I using alcohol in a way to numb my emotions? Because that's the big thing about alcohol. Alcohol is it anesthetizes difficult feelings. And so at Christmas, when we're all thrown together, family members all together for an intense amount of time, sometimes, people just feel they absolutely need to or want to anesthetize themselves against each other. For example, the raging alcoholic or the active alcoholic addict who is creating eggshells and creating a horrible atmosphere and everything, just because they're doing that and it's not nice, and everyone else is, in a sense, you could argue, the sort of victim of the situation, it's also not nice for the person doing it. And so again, if you've got, I can think of someone I know who, there's a member of their family who has just changed over time, and clearly each year the alcohol intake is going up. What do you do in that situation? Well, at some point, you have to take evasive action as partners or relatives, and Al-Anon is a way forward, or reaching out to other, self-help groups. But also at some point, some kind of intervention is maybe needed with the person in question. And usually the best way to do an intervention is to surround yourself as the family member with friends and other family members who all feel that this person is in the same place, because there's a sort of safety in numbers. You don't become the sort of, it's not even that the person wouldn't believe you or want to target you. It's that thing of, for example, if as a parent you tell your child they're very good at something. No, I was a very depressed drunk, actually, good ship Lord. I'd get very, very, very maudlin. When you say to your kids, you're very good at this, and they're very good at it, but because you're a parent saying it, they can't trust you. But then when someone else says it, it's given sort of validation. It's the same thing. If an intervention is needed of some form at some point in the new year, doing it with friends and family so that you're all in a similar situation and you're not isolated as the one person doing it. It means that the person in question, the alcoholic, can't just sort of dismiss it by saying, well, of course you're going to say that because you live with me and you think this. It's actually, oh no, look, and your friend and your mum and everyone else. That's why when you go into rehab, the most important part of rehab recovery is facing your family, every member of your family, and listening to everything they have to say and letting them break you down. And it sounds like, whoa, really? Who's willing to do that? Well, not a lot of people are willing to do that, but unless you're willing to do that, unless you're willing to make a fearlessly honest inventory of yourself and stare the hurt and the upset and the sadness in the face and own it, only then will you be able to actually make some steps in the right direction. I hope some of this helps. I hope some of this works. All I would say is, in many situations, don't forget, you don't have to do anything. If you feel in danger or struggling, opt out of a scenario. See if you can change the conditions of the scenario. Could you talk to someone who's organising a party or an event or something and say, look, would you mind it not, maybe if everyone's going to be getting drunk and drinking, could you maybe talk to someone who you have a caring relationship with and say, maybe don't introduce the drinks quite so fast right at the beginning? Or could you maybe not sort of keep offering more and more? Do you know what I mean? Just, are there little ways that you can stage manage the situation? If you struggle with alcohol being freely around you, just say to whoever's running the house, can we just make it a bit more scarce? That kind of thing. Anyway, guys, I hope you have a lovely Christmas. And also, just finally, it's absolutely fine sometimes to feel a little bit sorry for yourself and go, wouldn't it be nice just to be able to take the edge off things? It would. But you know what? Sometimes we can't all always have what we want, and that's okay too. And so sometimes allowing ourselves to experience something that's a bit difficult and uncomfortable is okay. We will get over it. You will get through it, to quote that kid's story. We won't go over it, we won't go through it. We're going on a bear hunt, whatever it is. Anyway, so take it easy, take your time, share any experiences beneath here. If over the festive period you're struggling, I'll drop in on the comments underneath here and I'll reach out back to you as well. Otherwise, you've got Vlogmas Landing very soon. Guys, thank you, because chatting like this is really important for me too. It's an important process of sharing, and it allows me to sort of cross-reference the way in which I'm approaching things. Tim Reed, sending you big recovery vibes, dude. It allows me to kind of, check in on myself and all that kind of stuff. So, guys, have a lovely evening. Enjoy Vlogmas.